This
vote.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're recording now. Thank you for doing that. What I'll do is I will call for a vote, and anybody that is a nay on the vote to speak up. All right. So if you're a nay, say so. That will be recorded, and all other votes would be recorded as a yes, unless somebody speaks up as they wish to abstain. Without objection, we'll go with that procedure. All right. Motions are going to have to be handled the way they're normally handled, though. So let's move on to number 2, which is the approval of the minutes from January 16, 2020. That was attachment number 2. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Somebody's going to have to.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Motion by Mr. Hardy, second by
Frank with the second.
All right, Mr. Rogers. All right, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, again, by the procedure just mentioned, any of those against signify by saying no. Hearing none, the motion passes. On to item number 3. Item number 3 is a public hearing on the FY 21-24 Central Virginia Transportation Improvement Program. And do we want to introduce this first, Scott, and then have the public hearing, or how do we want to do this?
We can do that. Yeah, that probably makes sense.
So let's introduce the topic, and then we'll go over the procedures.
Okay. This is attachment number 3 in your packet. The Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, is a federally mandated document that runs for 4 years. This one being covering the years 2021 to 2024. It is not an aspirational document. It's not our long-range plan. It doesn't say what we want to do. It actually says what is being done. It's a list of the projects that have federal money attached to them within the urbanized area. So we are always operating under a TIP. The TIP from the 15 or so MPOs in Virginia all combined together to make the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP. And so it's a living, breathing document. We edit the TIP numerous times a year, typically. What you see there in attachment 3 is the framework for the next TIP, the 2021 to 2024 TIP. There will be projects added, there will be projects changed throughout the life of that document. But what we and the other MPOs in Virginia are trying to do this month and last month and next month is get our TIPs adopted so that the state can start compiling them to get to the feds when they need to. This document, we just added a little bit to it from previous years. We've added more of a narrative about what is a transportation planning organization, what is the TIP process, what are the funding processes, some additional background information so that members of the public who are reviewing it might be able to get more context for what's going on. It's divided into several chapters. The bulk of it is the surface highway section, which deals with VDOT money, basically the projects that VDOT brings to us, the highway projects. We also have transit. That would be the GLTC programs and operations, as well as human services programs from organizations like the Central Virginia Alliance for Community Living. The airport has a section in here as well. They've given us their projections on what federal monies they believe are going to be coming in as well. So like I said, just because a project is not listed in here does not mean it's not going to happen. When projects get approved for Smart Scale, for example, they get added to the TIP. You may recall that back in January, we added the split pairs project at Lakeside Drive in 221 to the TIP because it had been approved for funding, and so we added it to the document.
Okay, so with that overview, what we what we'll do now is we'll hold the public hearing. This is also item number 5 on the agenda, so we will hold off on our questions or discussion about it at this time. All right, so these are the electronic meeting procedures. Those of you that can see it, or it's on the screen, I'm going to read this out loud for the record and for those that are on the phone. So the Central Virginia Transportation Planning Organization welcomes public participation. In order to provide an equitable opportunity for those interested in providing comment, the following procedure will be practiced during electronic meetings. 1, individuals who wish to speak during the public comment period at a period of hearing or meeting are directed to use the chat feature to identify themselves by typing their name in the chat dialog box. Yes, I am an engineer, not a linguistic specialist. So the chat feature is the little kind of like the bubble spot on the upper right-hand corner. Number 2, all submissions will be recorded by staff. During the public comment period, staff will read the names of those provided in the order received, and each participant will be unmuted and allowed to share their comments. Public comments will abide by the standard 3-minute time period, which can be extended at the CVTPO policy board's discretion with the approval of the majority of its members. Okay, so that's it. I hope everybody understands the rules for that. I do not know. I don't believe I saw any members of the public here. However, at this point, we will open the public meeting. It is 4:10 p.m. and we will open the meeting to public comment. Are there any Mallory, did any members of the public join us? All right.
Sorry, no, yeah, there's no messages in the chat at this time.
Were there any phone calls received or emails received at the office about this matter?
I did not receive
No,
any.
that's correct. We ran an official public comment period back from in March and April that was advertised in the paper. We received no comments during that, but we were accepting comments all the way up through today, and we didn't receive emails or phone calls or written comments.
And was this properly advertised?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, we'll call the public hearing as closed. It is 4:11 p.m. There were no comments either written, called in, or in this public hearing that were posted. All right, thank you. We are on to item number. We're on to item number 4. Item number 4 is election of officers for FY 2021. This will be a term beginning July 1 through June 30th, 21. All right, so as we decide in our bylaws updates from the last meeting, there'll be a rotating chairmanship. The city of Lynchburg is rotating off. Campbell County is serving as vice chair. Campbell County will now, according to the bylaws, be the chair, and Amherst County will be the vice chair. After some discussion, I understand that the slate would be considered would be John Hardy, supervisor, as of Campbell County as chair, and Jimmy Ayers, supervisor of Amherst County, as vice chair. Is there a motion to accept those to accept the nomination? Well, let me ask this: are there any other nominations for that position, which I don't think would be in order with our bylaws, but are there any? Hearing none, the slate of officers would include Mr. Hardy and Mr. Ayers. All those in opposition to naming them as officers signify by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Hardy and Mr. Ayers, and you guys get to have the fun next time. So thank you. And I guess, Scott, since we're still in this current fiscal year, I'll continue on with the meeting at this point.
Yes.
Great. All right, thank you for that. That was nice and easy. All right, now we're in item number 5, which is a consideration of the proposed FY 21 through 24 Central Virginia Transportation Improvement Program, the CVTPO, that Scott just kind of elaborated. So let's discuss that further, and maybe Scott, do you want to go into some of the highlighted projects?
Sure. Let me
like to do this.
Let me scroll down to do that. Many of the projects in the TIP, and this is at the request of smaller MPOs in Virginia like us, are grouped together. So we don't have, for example, individual bridges that are being worked on or things like that. We have a project grouping for bridge repair. But if you go to page 15 of the TIP document, you'll start to see project listings. And just to give you just a kind of a overhead view, the primary projects, right now we only have one. There will be other projects added, but we've got some access management on Route 460 out near Falwell Airport that we're waiting to close out. Secondary road projects include this is Amherst County Route 682. This is mainly debt refinancing. Again, every time federal money touches something, it ends up in here. If you go on to the next page, urban projects, Osborne Road Phase 2 is being closed out, but the debt service is listed. Later on, you'll see the split pairs, the 221-501. Just various things in there, but then we get on to the into the groupings, the maintenance and safety operations and other things. All of these numbers are in thousands, so just to make it a little bit easier to take up less space in the spreadsheet, they're reduced. If we go on to the public transportation and transportation demand management, which is on page 20. You'll just see the beginnings of mainly GLTP's programming for what they are going to do with their funding for the next several years in their different categories, and the categories will actually get added to as we go along. This list will get much lengthier. We only put in categories that had dollar amounts assigned to them at this moment, though. We also have down on the bottom of page 21. The Central Virginia Alliance for Community Living, formerly the Central Virginia Area Agency on Aging, has operating assistance and paratransit vehicles that they plan on purchasing next fiscal year. On page 22, we have the airport, and this just shows the federal funding that they anticipate to receive over the next several years, along with proposed projects, including building or expanding a taxiway, working on lighting on the airport, and some other concrete work, aprons in transitions between asphalt areas. So that's just a highlight of the projects. And like I say, the list gets much longer as we move along.
I hope that all the member localities have had a chance to review these projects to make sure that your key projects are incorporated in the TIP. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts?
I've got a question for Scott. Scott, in our next meeting, we're going to be approving the rural transportation plan. What's the difference between that one and this one?
So yeah, that's a great question. So the TIP is the federal construction money that is coming into our urbanized area. The Unified Planning Work Program, which will actually be coming up to this body next in the agenda, and then for the Planning District Commission at the next meeting, the Rural Work Program, are the ways that we intend to spend the PDC and MPOs planning money in the next fiscal year. So it's not construction work, it's basically how we're allocating staff and providing services to the localities. So the TIP is a construction, basically a construction financing document, whereas the work programs are just that, are work programs for the staff for the upcoming year.
Scott, I have a question.
Mhm.
On page 22, the 6-year airport project grant fund, I understand basically this is you have the federal and the Virginia Department of Aviation listed. Then there's another line item listed called local airport pay as you go. And I don't see, there's nothing listed there. Is that because nobody's told you there's anything?
Right.
That may be a better question for Bonnie, actually.
Well,
Okay, is Bonnie on?
Bonnie's on, but Bonnie doesn't know the answer to that question. Scott,
Oh,
it sounded
sorry.
like that's all right, Scott. It sounded like you looked like you have something.
well, I have something, and that is that these numbers came straight from the airport. So what I would imagine is that because we're talking about fiscal year 2021 starting next year, they don't know what their local match is going to be yet, because this TIP starts next year, not this July 1st. So we were asking them for information a little earlier than they were completely prepared to provide it, but they gave us this framework to start with.
Okay.
What the city nomenclature is, the pay-as-you-go is basically cash, while the other ones are either other sources or financing. So
Yeah.
it doesn't look like this, and the airport, I don't think typically has a lot of pay-as-you-go funds because so much of it is heavily subsidized by the feds or
That's
the
right.
That is correct.
But good question, Kenny. Any other questions?
I've got another question just about how to read the document. Let's see, I'm looking at page 24, and a lot of these are interstate and have no description other than 99.99. Are these just statewide programs that just happen to be passing through our jurisdiction?
Yes, they are kind of statewide, and Rick and Chris correct me, but I believe that's correct, that they are statewide programs that are touching our urbanized area in some way.
And
But
the
not
dollar
necessarily
amount,
Correct.
is that the amount being spent in our area? Or is that the total project?
That's
It's
our
total
area.
project listings.
Oh, total project. Okay.
Thank you.
And you may see some things in the TIP that don't necessarily reflect something that may actually be occurring here, but it's a statewide program. And part of the requirement is that we show that so it falls into the STIP from a statewide perspective.
So Rick, I have a question about bridges. And as you know, both the city and the county of Amherst want to do a pedestrian lane on the John Lynch Bridge and one under or near or somehow associated with the EC Glass Bridge. Are those bridge projects? Are they alternative transportation projects?
The projects that you see listed in this document are actual live projects that have either gone through, construction and we're going for project closeout, or they're live projects that are starting to receive money, such as 221 Split Pairs project.
I understand.
So there's no planning bridges or anything like that. Things that are located in here are strictly for maintenance and upkeep and bridge replacement projects that are getting ready to either have been completed or getting ready to get started or underway currently.
I guess my question is, would those types of projects, when and as they exist, would they be in the bridge section or in the transportation and enhancement section?
Okay. Depending upon what the funding stream would be for those projects, it would fall either if it's a part of the bridge program or if it's part of the enhancement program, it would be listed under there as part of an urban project.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, as I'm scrolling through this, Scott, it looks like it looks like we need to adopt this if there's no further discussion. Correct?
Right, there's a resolution on page 29 that by way of adopting the tip, you'll also be adopting the resolution.
Okay, thanks. I ran into something that looked, I was looking at 28. What was 28 then?
28 is the certification of the urbanized area, which is done periodically, but we're still using that one from 2014.
Okay. All right, so you see the resolution on page 29. Is there a motion for the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Verchik. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm not sure who, it was either Mr. Rogers, but who came in before Mr. Rogers?
Jimmy Ayers.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. All right, second by Mr. Ayers. All right, any further discussion on the tip? Hearing none, all those opposed to approving the resolution signify by saying no. Hearing no opposition, therefore the motion carries. Bonnie, were you getting ready to say something?
No.
All right. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries. All right. Next item, then, thank you for that, is as I'm scrolling back up to my agenda, it's another acronym, is the consideration of proposed FY 2021 CVTPO Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWA. And that's items number 6 in your agenda packet. Scott, would you clarify, please?
Sure. So every spring, typically in March or April, but it was delayed because of our COVID situation, we bring to you the UPWP, or Urban or Unified Planning Work Program, which is basically the budget and staffing and program plan for the MPO's activities within the urbanized area. As Dean mentioned, the PDC will be reviewing the rural work program at 5 o'clock. So I'm assuming that folks have had a chance to take a look at this. I'll just go over a couple of highlights. Typically, in recent years, the UPWP work program for our area includes a number of general activities that we do, providing technical assistance, smart scale assistance, GIS assistance to the localities, things like that. So of course that's in there as well. But there's often several larger components, and one of those larger components begins on page 6 out of 24 of the UPWP, and it's finishing the long-range plan, which we're in the throes of right now, but that will roll over into next year, into next fiscal year. So the activities that are going to take place from, say, July into September are putting the final touches on the plan, and also doing something new this time, which we haven't done before. We're going to be launching an interactive website, web-based long-range plan, where members of the public and you guys can go on, pull data, look at maps, create reports based on various parts of the plan, and we plan to keep that updated throughout the life of the plan until the next until the 2050 update is done. And so we're really looking forward to that, but that's what we're going to be working on building over the next couple of months as we move towards September. So there are a number of pages talking about the scope of work for the long range plan. We're in that right now, but the tail end parts of that will be done this year. There's also a somewhat complex chart in here on page 12. Because the long range plan, whether we pay a consultant to do it or use staff funding or use staff time to do it, and frankly we do both, it costs a lot of money, and it's a process that happens every 5 years. Instead of shutting down all other program activities during the years that we're doing the long range plan in order to pay for that long range plan, we squirrel away some money into the federal system so that we can then draw that money when the long range plan becomes when it comes time to do it. Since I took this position back in 2016, I have always had a hard time getting my head around what we have drawn and when, because we have to make sure that we do certain things with that money that we squirreled away so that we can then tap it when we need it. So I've come up with this chart to show how we're going to be we call it banking money, and how that money gets banked and then how it gets spent as we hit a long range plan update period. So really, this is just there for the next policy board members, the next MPO staffers, to be able to see how this works, so that we make sure we have the money available when we need it. But that's new for this time. We haven't had that chart before, and it may need some adjusting. I may have made some mistakes with it, but we're going to try it out. Another thing that we're going to be doing, Campbell County has asked us, let's see, this is going to be on page, sorry, bear with me. Computer is not scrolling well. Another activity that we're going to be doing, it's on page 17. Campbell County has asked us to help them evaluate the corridor of Village Highway basically between Rustburg Elementary School and Rustburg High School. There is going to be some school construction activity dealing with a middle school happening there, and they want to make sure that that corridor operates as efficiently as possible for the safety of the students as well as motorists going through and others. So we're going to be undertaking a study of that corridor in this next fiscal year. We're going to be starting it very quickly this summer once July 1st happens, so that we can provide support to the county on that. That road actually serves as a boundary between the MPO area and the rural area. So we're going to be using some MPO funding to help pay for our consultant services that we need for that project. And then we're going to be using some of our rural funding to help pay for our staff who will be assigned to that project. We also have our alternative transportation programs. Got a lot going on, especially with the city of Lynchburg, but also with the town of Bedford. Some other activities in Amherst County dealing with alternative transportation. And then the support that we provide to Greater Lynchburg Transit Company, dealing with helping them roll out their strategic plan, their transit development plan, bus stop studies, mapping, and things of that sort. Towards the end, you will see the proposed budget. It's going to be on page 22. These are the proposed expenditures, and they show our federal income. This is all based on our population or the size of the MPO. So we have federal income and then state match and local match. So the local match is coming out of the Central Virginia Planning District Commission budget, which is partially funded by dues from the localities. And happy to answer any questions folks might have.
Okay, questions about the work plan? All right, Scott, I think that chart is very helpful. Thank you for keeping in mind the succession planning for when you unfortunately have to leave us and move out west. But thank you for keeping that in mind. All right. So there is a resolution. I'm trying to figure out which. There's a resolution on number 2, and then there's a resolution on page 2, and another resolution plays on page 3 and 4.
Correct.
So the resolution on page 2 is the UPWP. So I know we need to do that one now. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? The resolution approving the fiscal year 2021 Unified Planning Work Program.
This is Frank. So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Second? Actually having to make you unmute and do this.
Second, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Campbell County stepping up. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Any discussion on the Unified Planning Work Program?
Turner, I just need to add that the second resolution there is authorizing Gary Christie to apply for Federal Transit Administration funds, which frankly we've already done because we had to do it by May 30th. Typically, as I said, we adopt these documents in April, but we do need that resolution adopted as well.
Okay, well, we're working on the first one right now. So thank you, Scott. So this is I'm ready to call for the vote on the Unified Planning Work Program. All right, all those opposed signify by saying no. Hearing none, the ayes have it. Now, so Scott, the resolution of the filing of an application of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation for grants of federal funds under Federal Transport Administration Section 5303 program and state matching funds is a resolution authorizing Gary Christie as Secretary of the TPO to apply for grants on behalf of the TPO. Is that a succinct summary of that?
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
This is Frank, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Second.
Second from Mr. Verchek. All right. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those opposed signify by saying no. Hearing no opposition, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, thank you for that. I'm scrolling back to my agenda now. All right, so item number 7 is the prioritization of the project listing for the Connect Central Virginia 2040 plan. And Scott, you want to introduce this or go straight to EPR?
I'll introduce it while Mallory is giving EPR the screen. So as you all know, we're moving along with the development of the long-range plan. We've been working with the technical committee over the past several months to start developing the actual project list, which is what everybody wants to see in the long-range plan. We've gotten to the point where we have taken projects from lots of different sources that your localities have provided to us, and then started to measure them with cost-benefit analysis, and then look at scoring. And so what Will Cockerell and the folks from EPR would like to do today is show you kind of the results, I think the top 30 projects, and how that cost-benefit scoring has taken place. And the technical committee saw this last week. We asked them for comments by today. We haven't received any from them. They seem fairly agreeable to the list. But Will, take it from here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. I just want to check my mic.
You're good.
Great. Well, thank you for having us on the agenda today, and thanks, Scott, for the introduction. We have a few other EPR staffers on the call. I have Marissa Sperry, who's been working hard on logistics for the June 30th virtual town hall. We also have Phil White on the line as well, who's been instrumental in pulling together the projects for the project list, scoring those projects through the project evaluation tool that we have, and working with VDOT staff on fine-tuning those. And of course, we have Phil Lynch on the line, who is project principal and lead transportation engineer for EPR. He's worked on so many of these different transportation projects through studies over the years, and he spent a lot of time reviewing these projects and really fine-tuning them beyond what is typical for an LRTP process. We have a pretty short presentation here. Just going to give an update of the project list, talk about the June 30th town hall, and go into some next steps here. For the project list of what we included in the packet, just a brief background of what we did to get here. And that is in fall 2019, we developed a list working with Rick Youngblood, David Cook, and Scott and Philip from the MPO side of identifying project lists, project studies from across the region. We collected projects, all existing transportation recommendations that we could find from existing documents, and put that into what we called a candidate list of projects. And that's all the projects that we would evaluate and review for the long-range transportation evaluation process. We reviewed that list of candidate projects with MPO and VDOT staff back in the winter of 2019, February. We had an in-person meeting there in the offices where we would normally meet and reviewed that candidate list of projects. We met with the TTC, as Scott mentioned, back in March. This, I think, March 11th or 12th, and the TTC went through and reviewed those projects. Some of those projects we vetted into a separate list as projects that were not quite ripe for evaluation. They ended up actually adding several additional projects that we were missing, so we brought those into the project evaluation process. In March and April, I mentioned Bill Lynch spent a lot of time reviewing those projects, and again, he's on the line if you have any specific questions on projects as we get into that part of the presentation or part of our discussion. But really moving through those projects, get into a much more detail. That's really, if you're going to spend additional time, that's with the LRTP, that's where you need to spend the additional time of evaluating those projects and really fine-tuning them and getting the cost estimates fine-tuned. The need to do that with this version of the LRTP is greater given Smart Scale and some of the project evaluation scoring processes that we now have. Traditionally, LRTPs, those project lists are a little bit more vague, and the cost estimates are not, it's not as quite of a high confidence on those cost estimates. But since we have Smart Scale and other funding processes that rely on more confidence in those cost estimates and more detail into those projects for funding applications, really spending time there, using the LRTP as more of a launch pad for project applications into those funding considerations, and having all the information that we need to help the MPO and the localities be better prepared for those applications. So that's where we spent some additional time in the spring. In April, we had individual calls with the TTC members to prepare them for the project scoring list. I'll talk about that in just a moment. May 2019, a couple of months ago, the TTC met. They reviewed the initial benefit scores for all the projects. Initially, we had over 120 transportation projects across the region, which is a very large, comprehensive list of projects. We narrowed that down to about 80, and we scored those 80 projects and evaluated those according to the performance measures that the MPO adopted back in January. TTC members reviewed the benefit scores for those projects. We presented that to them in May. There were no comments on that list of ranked by benefit scores. As Scott mentioned, we met with the TTC last week on June 11th, provided the benefit cost, because the main focus is, we all know that transportation funding is a limited resource and the need is great. So the whole point of this process is to really hone in on what's the best, most cost-effective transportation investment we can make regionally to meet the needs that we've identified. So we provided that benefit cost ratio to the TTC members this month. Scott mentioned we did not receive any comments on the list that we provided. The scoring process itself, the policy board reviewed and adopted the 5 goals for the 2045 LRTP process, and included in that were 16 performance measures that support those goals. We use those performance measures in a project evaluation tool that we enter data into our scoring spreadsheets and it scores and evaluates the whole list of projects. So 80 projects that were scored. When you factor in the 16 performance measures over 80 projects, it's something like 2,000 data entries for the scoring process doing this. Project engineers at EPR spent a lot of time fine-tuning the cost estimates. Once we had a high level of confidence in those, we did the benefit cost ratio and we scored those according to that. The scoring sheet itself, this is something that Phil and Marissa also spent a lot of time entering this data and doing quality checks and double checks and triple checks on this as we go through it of scoring these projects, entering data for congestion, traffic volumes. We looked at PSI locations. That was a big importance. Economic development was one of the highest, that's the highest rated or weighted score in the evaluation for this. So we took the project scores. Project scores are actually listed, are included in the packet. A brief breakdown of those. Of the top 30, we decided to focus in on the top 30 on those list of projects. I do want to make a note that that does not necessarily translate to the final constrained list of projects, as we're still developing what the constrained budget amount is to determine how much money can we expect over the next 20 years of the project horizon. We have to actually look at the TIP that you just approved and consider those projects and obligated funds that are coming from that process as well. But of the top 30, Lynchburg, no surprise, this is consistent with previous versions of the LRTP, has the majority of the projects. We did have Campbell County had 3, Amherst, this is based purely on the scoring methodology and on the costs and the benefit cost ratios, had 3, Bedford had 2. Every locality actually had a project in the top 10. And so looking at the data, just the data by itself worked out that way. And again, we have Bill Winch on the line and obviously Rick Youngblood with VDOT staff. But we had a couple of minor tweaks from what was in the packet, just meeting with Rick Youngblood and David Cook. They provided us some additional information that we updated into the scoring process. Perhaps if you're looking through these as I'm talking, a few trends that we noticed as Candler's Mountain tended to score really well in this process. Timberlake Road tended to score really well in this process. You have multiple projects, access management in the city and also in Campbell County that involved Timberlake Road. We can also come back to a previous slide if you have questions. Campbell Avenue also did well in terms of the scoring. That's just based off of the what projects we had, the cost of those projects, and the characteristics of that roadway. Graves Mill tended to score well as well. You see that facility pop up quite a bit. It's on the Bedford side and on the city side. And then South Amherst Highway, that showed up, I think 3 times in the top 30 of different segments of that roadway. And as we mentioned in the memo, one of the important things with this process is the project evaluation isn't just populating the list of projects in the plan, but it's also an opportunity for us to really fine tune and improve, enhance projects for the smart scale and other funding processes. So what we would love to hear from you, if not on the call today, then following up over email with staff, and they can forward those comments back to us, is if there's a high priority facility that is not showing up in the top 30, we're trying to match up our scoring evaluation process similar to how the state determines funding for projects. So if there is a facility that doesn't score well here, it's probably not going to score as well in smart scale. So we want to flag those, go back and redefine those projects. If there are ways of, if there's a PSI or safety location that's adjacent to it, we can possibly expand it. We can reevaluate the cost side of it, try to bring the benefit cost ratio down on those. So there are things we can do on trying to improve scoring. Again, that benefit goes beyond just this plan. That's to help those projects score better in those funding processes. And also wanted to make a note that we have the constrained list of projects, which we have talked about in the past. There's something called the vision list. We are listing any other projects in that vision list. If a project is in the vision list, it actually still qualifies for funding in Virginia under Smart Scale. So if a project doesn't make it into the constrained list, it's still in the plan and it can still qualify for funding. And so we're working very closely with VDOT staff to make sure that there's no projects that get left off, projects that are important to the communities and region. The update on the engagement side, we have to meet a requirement of a public open house. Not only that, but there's great value in having public open house events. With the COVID-19 pandemic, that has made it very difficult to navigate in that type of engagement process. What we have done with many other projects that we're working on is we've held these virtual town hall events. We met with the TTC to get feedback on that, to get this set up. We're going to have a town hall event virtually. We have a webinar set up. We're actually going to stream it through the community access channel. Marissa has actually been talking to them. Scott has helped us connect with them on that, where we'll be making a presentation online, open it up for comments or questions. We have actually a video that we'll play at the beginning of the video we provided to Scott for review. It's also something we can play in community access as a commercial of sorts. We actually try to play it here as a test run, but because of the delay, it doesn't quite show up very well through this platform. And then also just document update. Again, talking to Scott, we have many of these chapters actually drafted out. We're just trying to fine tune them and make them as tight as we can. We'll provide that to staff for comments and review, and then forward off to you all and to the TTC to start getting your eyes on this as soon as possible and start vetting this, so that over the summer we're spending our time taking the direction we hear from you and fine tuning that, and you're not seeing the plan for the first time as we get to the end of the process. Next steps, really, again, I know we're running a little short on time for the meeting agenda, but any comments on projects that are missing from that top 30 list, please let us know. We can flag those, reevaluate them, look at the cost, look at the engineering side of it, look at how that project is defined to help that project score better. Also, Scott can follow up with you all about the June 30th event. We want to try to get that video and information out to get a high level of participation. We've actually, thanks to Scott's guidance, and also thank you to VDOT staff, who's really wanted us to emphasize public intercepts back late last year. Looking at the level of public engagement, we've really blown away what's been done in the past with the amount of comments that we've received and the engagement we've had. And so we're really happy with that. We want this virtual town hall event not to just meet a requirement, but to really get engagement on this and get the word around on it, and try to get as many people as we can get eyes on that. So with that, Scott, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, I think I unmuted myself. All right, so let's ask any questions that we have. If you look at the list of projects starting in attachment 7, it's page 75 of the agenda. You can see where the locality has listed out the projects. And I just want to make sure that everybody has their projects listed that they need. And I'm sure if it takes some time to digest, I'm sure that the EPR team will be willing to hear your comments at a later time. So any comments from members of the board?
I have a couple questions if I could. I know we're getting late on time, but project number, or the project priority number 5 and then number 13. Can somebody tell me what the status of those two projects is? Candler's Mountain Murray, and then Lynchburg Expressway, Candler's Mountain 501.
Let's see here. Okay.
Are you talking about the interchange project, Kenny?
Yep.
interchange project itself has been submitted as a smart scale project. They are going through evaluation now of those particular projects. That is focused strictly on the interchange itself and improvements to capacity on the expressway underneath of the bridge. So as a part of that project, ramps will be revised, bridge will be rebuilt, new through lanes or two new lanes underneath the bridge as part of that project.
And if you're successful in getting that, what's the timing of when that money would come in?
That's a fairly unique project based upon state of good repair money. There's a significant amount of state of good repair money that will be coming in. Of course, it is smart scale. So the smart scale funding in itself would not come until you're looking at the construction phase, but it's very possible that the state of good repair money would come in earlier year by year to do an incremental process through PE right away into the construction phase of that project.
What about the actual construction money? When are we talking if the smart scale?
Well, the smart scale right now, you're looking at any smart scale money that's brought in would be about fiscal year 2025, 26 timeframe. But the state of good repair money, based upon how that would lay out, there would be an incremental amount of money in FY 21, 22, 23, 24 that would work through that 6-year program in order to work right into construction.
Okay. The other project I was asking about was the.
Kenny, can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
So Rick, that project looks like it's very difficult to phase it. Would the state of good repair money be used for design then, and then the construction money used to construct it, or will there have to be separate design money allocated?
It would be a blend. We've already done a significant amount of work on that project through pre-survey work and everything. So as far as the front end state of good repair money would go into the design perspective. It's minimal right away. Most all of that money would be into the construction. It's possible the project could be advanced, but we can't guarantee that.
So really to 25, 26 at the earliest to actually see dirt moving.
That's what I'm obligated to tell you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, Kenny, I'm sorry to interrupt your questioning.
So yeah, Chris, the other project I was talking about was the Candler's Mountain Murray Place intersection reconstruction. What's the timing on that?
At this stage, there's no project that's been submitted as part of the smart scale. This particular project is basically phase 1 for the Candler's corridor, and that's the interchange improvements. We're not looking at anything at the intersection at the mall or anything at Murray Place at this stage.
Okay, so I guess I'm not clear. That project's on our list, ranked as number 5, though, right?
It is a prioritized project, but at this stage of the development, even though we've studied that corridor, it is a project that, in working with Liberty and the city, we weren't prepared to move forward with that particular project at this point. And there's other revenue streams such as HSIP, revenue share, and different things that may be able to be looked at in order to do quicker improvements.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about your specific localities and projects listed? How long is this?
Sure,
go ahead.
I just want to add one thing. It doesn't have to do with the top 30 projects, but as we move forward, I want to make sure that people don't see something that has gotten slipped out of the vision list. On the vision list from the last plan, the proposed southern, and this is a conversation that we can have another day, more lengthy if necessary, but the proposed southern bypass around Lynchburg, The TTC, in consultation with folks in Campbell County, determined that that should not be something that we're looking at scoring. There's just not a great deal of interest for it, and certainly not the financing for it. So that was not a constrained project last year or last time. There was no money assigned to it. But I don't want for that to sneak by folks when we get to the time in a couple of months where we're adopting things. I don't want for people to think that we're hiding that or anything.
Scott, if you don't mind, if I could add just really quick too, of if there are additional comments, if people could send those to Scott, and Scott can consolidate those and send them to us for us to review.
What's the time frame? When do you need comments by, Scott?
By next Wednesday would be most helpful.
Okay. To me, pulling the southern bypass off the vision statement, I know doesn't seem to be a lot of will to do that, but I believe that the southernmost section of 29 below the airport is going to get as congested as Madison Heights has been over the next couple of decades. So it seems to me that at least some idea that a bypass could be done should be hanging out there. But I'm not a resident of Campbell County and or Bedford County if a piece of it goes through Bedford or if it goes on the other side. But is it wise to leave that off? And maybe that's a question for Campbell.
Yeah, I'll just add that we have some pretty heavy access management improvements programmed or envisioned for that section to help deal with that. But yeah, I mean, we can discuss that as we get to the vision list or right now if you want.
I don't know if we have the time to right now,
Yeah.
but I think that's something that this group should take the time to discuss, unless there's absolutely no will to do it. Right now, it sounds like it's a technical recommendation, and this group is more of a political group. I'd be curious to hear the political discussion,
Right.
but we're bookended, right? Do you have another meeting at 5 o'clock? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, is there any further discussion on any of these matters? All right, then. Well, thank you to EPR for making the presentation and pulling this information together. I would encourage the administrators and managers to take a hard look at this list, make sure that your staff has covered everything that they need to cover, and get comments to Scott here very shortly. Excuse me. All right, moving on to the next item is any matters from members. Let me ask, could you remove the presentation off the screen so I could see everybody at once? All right. I don't hear any matters from members. Is there anybody that has anything? All right.
Hey, just
yes.
want to clear one thing. The Lynchburg district we received smart scale or applications across Canada.
Chris, we're having significant problems hearing you. Why don't you cut off your video and try that again?
300 district for Canada projects in a total of about 328. High level, appreciate everybody.
All right, Chris, could you repeat yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Would you mind repeating what you're saying?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sure. Just real fast.
Sounds like an argument for rural broadband. Yes, sir.
Sure, just real fast.
Chris, I'm sorry, we can't hear you at all. Would you mind sending that as an email to Scott and ask if Scott can distribute that to the board? Hey, Rick, if you could hear that, maybe you could pass that comment on to Chris. And
yeah, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, sir.
All right, what he's telling you is we had 33 smart scale applications, about $328 billion worth of projects. They're going through the screen-in process currently, and hopefully by next week, all the applications will be open for final submittal.
Okay. And would you contact him and let him know if he can't hear us very well that if he has anything that he'd like to add to that, just to submit it to Scott, and Scott will send it to the rest of us. All right.
Will do.
Any other matters from members?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank you for your leadership over the past 2 years of this group. You have been stellar in your leadership. You've made changes. You took on our bylaws, and your engineering background has certainly helped us as we have moved through many things over the past 2 years. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. I do appreciate that. It's been fun to work with everybody. I'm going to miss, the thing I miss most is the interaction with the various localities and the professionals in those localities. So I miss it very much. I'll miss that part very much. I believe that Bo Wright will be joining you in the fall, and I hope you will be as welcoming to him as you were to me when I first joined in. So I don't believe there's anything else, but thank you for that, Bonnie. All right. Hearing none, you've got some informational items there. Please take note on your schedule. I know that we are tight on time. There's the next CV. We need to make sure that our language is correct on the agenda, Scott. CVTPO meeting at 4 p.m. on Thursday, July 6th. Hope you all have a great next meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.